Yes, good morning, Niger. Of course, it's time to begin our conversation, but not without taking the backgrounder. And Ibrahim Dan Hamidu has all the details.
Nigeria has long faced challenges in providing affordable and accessible higher education for its youth. With limited government fundings for universities and high tuition fees, many students are forced to drop out or forgo college altogether. The student loan scheme is a bold step towards addressing these issues and ensuring that all young Nigerians have the opportunity to access higher education and pursue a degree. In a groundbreaking development for higher education in Nigeria, President Tinubu recently signed the Students' Loans Act into law. The scheme is aimed at transforming access to education for young people across the nation. A few decades back, an attempt was made at implementing the scheme, but several issues ranging from unemployment, corruption on the part of staff of the managing agency and students, low funding, relocation of participating students, and so on. Later in 2023, the scheme received some attention, leading to the presidential assent towards January 2024 takeoff. But the student loan scheme, however, faced a lot of criticism and challenges due to some grey areas, but the battle was worthwhile, and amendments were made. With the cost of college education on the rise and many students struggling to afford tuition fees, this new initiative promises to revolutionize the educational landscape in Nigeria. Under the new law, eligible students will be able to apply for low-interest loans to cover their tuition fees, living expenses, and other educational costs. The scheme will be administered by a government agency tasked with overseeing the distribution of funds and ensuring that loans are repaid in a timely manner. The student loan scheme is expected to have a significant impact on students across Nigeria, particularly those from low-income backgrounds. By providing access to affordable financing for their education, the scheme will empower young people to pursue their dreams and secure a brighter future. As the program is rolled out and implemented, analysts advise it should be closely monitored to ensure it makes the desired impact, and necessary adjustments should also be made to ensure its success. The debate over the student loan scheme in Nigeria is not yet over, as guests on Good Morning Nigeria will discuss its impact and implications on higher education in Nigeria, as well its sustenance and how immune the scheme is to corrupt tendencies.
Thanks, Hamidu, for the background report. And joining us in the studio, we have Dr. Philip John Haya, an educationist. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Also joining us here is Comrade Chinonso Obasi. He's the President, Nigerian Youth Union, and former NANS President, 2016 to 2018. You are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
My pleasure, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right.
All right, also joining us for the conversation via Zoom is Professor Tahir Maman, SAN, the Honorable Minister of Education. Many thanks for joining us, Prof.
Good morning. I'm with you. Thank you.
All right, so we'll begin the conversation now.
You still have one more?
Yes, of course, we hope that you'll join us in the course of the program, so we'll just get into the conversation now.
All right, so let's start with the Minister of Education, Professor. Let's lay the foundation. I want you to lay the foundation of today's discussion, student loan scheme. What exactly is the objectives of this loan scheme, and what are the key features of the scheme?
Thank you once more. Good morning. Well, basically, the students' loan scheme is a facility brought by our president, approved by our president through this act, and in order to facilitate students' education in Nigeria at the university level, college of education, and polytechnics. In other words, in public institutions, it's not tenable for students in the private institutions. And you also remember that this is also complementing a major policy decision in this country whereby tuition is free. So students in tertiary institutions don't pay fees. And essentially what students pay usually is living expenses, such as hostel accommodation and maintenance costs in the institutions. But even at that, a lot of students from poor families struggle to pay those charges. So in line with his support to ensure, in line with his decision to ensure that no student in Nigeria fails to attend school, the president brought this policy and got it passed very rapidly in the National Assembly. And the main feature to note is that it's a facility that is, the amount there is 500,000 for each student every year to pay for these services. And then it is without interest. And then now the process for, there's no guarantor, there's no requirement of family income. Under the old law, there was some form of needs assessment that has been taken away under the new law. And then there's a whole agency set up to manage it, and is repayable when students finish their education at NYSC, 2 years after the education, after the NYSC, when they would have secured a job. And then in terms of the repayment, employers have a role. They are supposed to provide information on new recruits to ensure those who are employed and have benefited, are made to pay for the loan they acquired. And so basically these are the services. And then now it's also expanded to include not only those in those formal institutions who have mentioned, but actually the students who are in and skills acquisition institutions which are approved by the government. And this is a very huge step, because the decision of the president is that his thought, very sound for that matter, is that not everybody must go to the University of Quality Education. There are many training centers around where students go to, young Nigerians go there for skills acquisition, and of course they are asked to pay make some payments, for their training. And so those students are now empowered to access whatever amount of money within that ceiling to be able to sponsor themselves within those training framework. And so it's an extremely revolutionary step by the president, which will go a long way to support poor families, for the education of their wards and children. And you remember also, this is also complementing another major policy of the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, where the social scheme was introduced of recent, and that also includes those who are serving, poor Nigerians entitled to a certain amount of money, including those who are even in the NYSC. And so you can see a president who is full of compassion and concern about the status of the poor people in the country, and bringing in all sorts of schemes to support them having a very, very decent livelihood, and as well as supporting them to educate their children in the institutions, in public institutions. So basically, these are the framework and the features of the Students' Loan Act.
Many thanks, Professor Maman, for that background of what the Student Loan Act is about. Could you tell us those that are qualified to benefit from this scheme? You know, is it reserved for certain disciplines, you know, in the tertiary institutions? And then those in private universities, are they also being covered, you know, with this scheme? Just give us a list of those who can benefit from it.
The loan is available to Nigerian citizens only, but not tenable in private universities. It is assumed that anybody who sends his child to a private university has the wherewithal to be able to finance his work. So certainly it's not available to them. And if you know, especially the amount of money they pay in private institutions, it's a lot of money. And so government cannot go into that. So it's only tenable in public institutions.
So you didn't talk about the disciplines. You know, does it cover anything at all that you're studying? You know, whatever course, whatever faculty you're in.
Yeah, programs. The programs are very open-ended. Yeah, it's open-ended. It's open-ended. It includes all courses. Every course is covered under the scheme.
All right. So thank you so much. You know, I know that Ademola is itching to ask you questions, but, you know, maybe because I'm closer to those who are currently in schools. And so I'm trying to, you know, ask what their concerns are. Could you also give us a brief highlight of the components of the old act, you know, which have been adjusted in this new one?
Well, under the old act, the major provision of the old act is the first, the issue of guarantor. It was there. Parents have to guarantee, or some people have to guarantee the students who apply for the loan, and then it was also only tenable to for courses in the universities and college of education. Now it is extended to those in skills. And then also under the old law, there was also a problem about the hosting institution or the hosting agency. It was under the CBN then. Now it's no longer under the CBN. It's now largely on its own, actually, although certain aspects of it, you know, it still will be under the Ministry of Education. There's a bit of problem there in terms of the accountability and which ministry is in charge. But certainly, and not in the CBN, it's the Ministry of Education is hosting it with a kind of semi-independent status in a way. So these are some of the things that need to be clarified as we move on, because we cannot have that kind of ambiguity. It doesn't help in the management of the fund to have such ambiguity. And also the loan, it's a pure federal government service, public sector service agency. It's not a money-making facility. And then if also even the source of funding at that time was a bit ambiguous. Now it has been clarified under the new law. Also, the management too was a bit heavy, and now it has been clarified. Under the old law, they had about 3 executive directors, and all the now is reduced to 2 with specific portfolio assigned to them. And so there are clarifications here and there, even though, as I said, we still have some gray areas which need to be clarified further in due course once implementation starts. But as it is, the law is very sound. The framework is very good for proper takeoff. an immediate takeoff of the scheme.
Clarify the issue of the management of the fund. We know that the federal government is setting up a management board to effectively manage this fund. So how will the board of directors, consisting of representatives from relevant ministries, regulatory bodies, participating agencies, ensure effective governance and management? What mechanism has been put in place to ensure effective management of this NEL fund?
Well, if you look at the structure of the board itself, probably this is a bit of a gap there, to my mind. It comprises of certain interests and stakeholders in the education and financial, the CBN, and then Nigerian NIMC, because of the data that will be involved, students union, and then all the agencies in the Ministry of Education that have to do with students, and then the Ministry of Education itself, and then the Ministry of Finance. So I believe this group of people will ensure that the scheme is properly managed. It's placed on a very sound management footing. The Ministry of Education, for instance, has an experience, very huge experience in managing scholarships. It has a whole directorate of scholarships, and so its experience will be brought to bear in the management of this scheme. And then also the ministry itself will ensure that the board, manages the scheme diligently. And the president was very emphatic on this the last when he signed in his remarks after signing the bill, that he wants to see transparency, he wants to see diligence and efficiency in the management of the board. And certainly those agencies that have huge experience in managing students' matters will ensure that that transparency holds sway, and so that nobody sees this as another place where they can play some games. That's not going to be allowed at all.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Maman. But we also want to know how, would this scheme ensure that the whole country is equally covered, such that it is not one-sided, in a situation whereby you have maybe you have more students benefiting from the scheme from a part of the country. How would it work? How would it run to ensure that there's equal spread, across the country, and affecting every tribe, or if you like, region? And then, could you tell us more about the repayment plan? Because those who are pessimistic about this scheme say that it's just another way to blow up corruption in the country. Such that you just give out the loans, and then maybe you're not able to get the money back, or you get the money back from certain people or certain students, and then you don't get from other people. So, I mean, just talk to us about this.
Thank you. Well, to start with, the law itself recognizes the need for equity and access by all in the whole country. And so that's why even in staffing, there's specific provision in the law that requires that the country is well represented, the geopolitical zones of the country are well represented in the leadership structure of the management. And then secondly, what you ask pertains to regulations. It's not in the act in terms of equity in access by the students. But I have seen the draft procedures that they have put in place, which the management, I believe, is going to adopt, that requires that students right across the country, access it, and there's a provision for ensuring spread, so that it's not cornered by just one section of the country. I know, as I said earlier on, with students' union members there and the various interests, I think that's where people were going to keep a very keen eye on that. The manager himself would keep a very, very keen eye on that to ensure that the beneficiaries come from all parts of the country. And I believe that shouldn't be a problem because even the resources accruing to the fund is quite diverse. So they are not going to run out of money as such. To be well funded. Then in terms of the repayment plans, as I said earlier on, the law requires that after 2 years after NYSC, you know, the funds become due for payment. And so employers of such students, employers of such graduates are required to make returns make inquiries on the status of the new employees, whether they are beneficiaries of the loan. It's a mandatory requirement for every employer to ask to check the background of any fresh employee to know whether they are beneficiaries of the loan, so that they now report back to the agency that will make arrangements for repayment. Of course, there's a small window there that takes care of students, graduates who are truly, truly indigent and have no means of repayment. But there are procedures established here to establish that so that they are giving some kind of additional time for repayment. Because if somebody is so terribly poor, he hasn't gotten a job, and really it is established that the fellow really has no work, then you can't really make money out of that kind of person. So, so there's a safeguard for ensuring that the money is repaid because it's available to students forever. So if there's no return on payments, then at some point the funds will dry up, and that's not going to be permitted.
Maman, you didn't quite speak to how you intend to keep track of those who benefit from this scheme. You know, I do not know if you joined during the paper's review. I'm sure you know about the increase on skilled workers in the UK now. And of course, the Japa phenomenon is with us. It's a reality. A lot of people are leaving the country, you know, and all of that. So just, I'm just giving a scenario. Say someone benefits from this loan scheme and eventually leaves the country. How do you want to keep track to get the money back? And that's on one end. Then you need adequate data, you know, to be able to stay on an individual or a beneficiary and be able to know when the person gets a job and all of that. This is Nigeria, where anything could really happen. You're talking about employers having to get back to the government and all of that. How do you, want to, make sure that the beneficiaries, are able to make returns back to government once they get gainful employment? This is really important because if you want to look at other schemes, for example, the Anchor Borrowers Program, I'm sure you know how that went, and then getting people to pay back. So could you speak to this?
Well, you are right. It's very important for people to repay, because if they don't, they will endanger the funds. But what you have said are management issues. Plans are being developed to ensure that there's a track provision for keeping track of beneficiaries, and that's why NIMC is part of it. And I know the former leadership, under the old law, they were working on procedures and processes that will ensure tracking of beneficiaries of the fund. So I believe once the leadership take off, these are some of the issues they will have to address. Yes, Japa is a reality, but they are not disappearing from the world. So even at that, even if they travel or leave the country, they are certainly be their way of tracking them and to ensure that there's a provision for them to be able to repay their loans. And it's not too much money. So even if somebody travels out, I believe they should be able to make an arrangement to be able to service his facility. But I believe, as I said, these are all internal procedural issues which the management will work out as soon as they are appointed and start work.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We'll get back to you in the course of this conversation. But let's come back to the studio right now, where we still have our guest, the educationist, Dr. Hayab. Now, Dr. Hayab, I just want you to speak to the fact that, the amendment of the Act, do you think it will resolve the previous challenges of eligibility, criteria management, repayment provisions of student loans?
Well, I do not know how we came to expounding the need for a guarantor. Maybe what we would have done was to reduce maybe the criteria. The guarantor that I knew before was you needed to get a lawyer or someone who was a senior civil servant. So yes, there's a problem of access if I'm indigent and I live in a remote community somewhere far away from the city. The chances that I'll get a lawyer in that community and also a senior civil servant was very, very tight. So maybe we would have looked for maybe the community leader.
That has been expunged.
Yes, now that's what I'm saying now. Expunging guarantorship already gives it a loophole. I don't know how we are going to educate ourselves to the point of sincerity. This is not the first time we have a student's loan. Since it failed, I think a good assessment should have been done. Why did it fail? That time people will go with different names and take this money, and the name they have in their schools is not what it is. I was also looking at them talking about how this money will be paid. From my experience of students' loan, for instance, in South Africa and in Ghana, the money is paid directly to the university's account and not to the student's account. And then the university manages this money, takes what is supposed to be for the payment, for the fees, and then the remaining, the university distributes it or maybe releases it to the student. Now, so when we cannot track, we don't have a guarantor. Somebody can just walk to a place and say they are indigent. So how do you verify these people are indigent and all that? So I think
I think with the management, sorry to cut you.
Yes.
I think with the management that the board management,
yes,
the universities, institutions, polytechnics, higher institutions are also involved in it. So that's what I think the government is trying to track whoever comes up.
Yeah, but that makes it a bit far. You know, what we're looking for is somebody who would have a good knowledge, if you like, a very close proximity. So if you are going to be maybe guaranteed, even by the village head where you come from, that is traceable. We have the name of the town the person is coming from, and then subsequently we can follow up. But just to talk about people who are far away, the problem is always people who are far away from you. TED Fund had this problem. When we were students, monies were paid, and some people took money from this country. I knew one in South Africa who took TED Fund's money and never came to the university, the same university as I was studying. And all they will do is they will have maybe one PDF letter somewhere. Every year they give it as what you call progress report, and money are paid into their accounts. I personally suggested to TED Fund that if you can pay this money straight to the universities, anyone who does not go to the university then cannot access the money. Once money touches a person's account, like she was saying here, people can even not go to the university. Somebody can take 500,000 and then that's it. The quest for education is now a bygone. So the tracking, taking away the guarantorship from the community, I think is one impediment that we need to check, because of the attitude, our character towards national development is very questionable. So if you had somebody from within the environment where the person comes from, an imam, a pastor, or maybe a village head, maybe it will put some people in check, maybe not everyone, but that would have been better.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Hayab. Comrade Chinonso Obasi, I know that you have a lot to tell us, but I would like you to tell us the drawbacks of this scheme. You've assessed it. You know, just point to us the loopholes in this scheme.
Well, thank you once again. Before I go to the drawbacks, I want to really appreciate the recommendation of the 2014 National Confab, where I served as a delegate, that first recommended for this student's loan. The person who moved for this motion was the NANS president as of 2014, Yinka Gbadebo, where we all served under him. This loan was recommended by the students' delegates, and it was unanimously approved in the confab. Though I'm aware the APC-led administration has failed to give recognition to the confab report, but we also know that most of the government policies and the things they are implementing from the Buhari's administration till date are secretly also lifted from that report. Bajabi Amila gave a soft landing to what Tinubu has done today by the push he gave when he was a speaker in the National Assembly. And today, I must sincerely thank President Tinubu for having the political will to also see that he signs this into law. It is not easy, no matter the political interest or no matter the reasons surrounding it, but it is for the general well-being of Nigerians. Coming back to the setback, you know, in 2016, when I was the national president of NANS, I almost lost my life, which the petition was with the IG, because I took a corrupt vice chancellor to EFCC, challenging corrupt practices. And there was several assassination attempts made on my life. Why am I bringing back this story to you? I'm bringing it back simply because most corrupt practices, the level of corrupt practices that take place in our institutions of learning, it's something that the anti-corruption agencies are not really paying attention to. Because the drawback I am seeing in this, as you earlier asked, is that the same way that the chief executives of higher institutions come to increase tuition fee at any time they feel they need to increase the IGR, without us so letting the students know that every month they get allocation, and they make the students believe that it is from what they pay they are using to run the institution. That is my greatest fear, because they are not always sincere with the running of institutions. This loan, as the educationist rightly said, giving a loan without a guarantor because you want to make it seamless is as good as you are dashing people money. You are just giving a free money. You just want to use it to gather a database, just like the Osibanjo trader money, where the VP was going to market as a hawker to distribute peanuts to people in the name of empowerment. Guarantor, having no guarantor is not good at all, as the educationist said, because you have made it become so porous that anybody can take the money in the name of students, because there is no way of really justifying that person is using. Though the board that will be a student may have their own caveat, but the caveat cannot be contrary to what has been captured in the law that the president signed. So if the law have said no guarantor, there is no other thing they can be doing outside what has been signed. But for me, another setback that I see in this whole thing, in the National Confab report that we recommended, we said, if a student is getting a loan from the government for studies, the government must also provide job available upon graduation, so that it will not be a situation whereby you finish school, statistics as of 2022-2023 showed that over 90,000 youths have no job. And now you are providing loan for people to go to more school and to increase that number where there is no market. You have provided no job for them to get. I finished my first degree in 2010, mechanical engineering. As of today, I can boldly say that 30% of my course-mates have no job. I finished my second degree in Petroleum Training Institute for 2014 underwater welding and offshore technology. The best one of the best students in my class is a taxi driver in Warri. So it is not just about getting the loan to go to school. If the government do not provide job for the beneficiaries of this loan to be absorbed upon graduation, let us be very sincere that this is another form of Osibanjo trader money, and there is nothing that should be expected. Nigeria today is a place where the normal credit app, where people can ask for a soft loan, get soft loan expected to pay back. But you see Nigerians who can terminate a particular SIM card just because they have used it to get certain loan, and they go over to go and register another SIM card to get another loan from another app. Most of us, who can be sincere to say, we get these notifications of maybe people in our contact list who have been indulged in one way or the other. But the fact is, Nigeria as a nation have not really gotten to that stage where we feel we can bring up a seamless procedure that will not be properly checkmated for accountability. Even if you hand over this thing to the chief executive, just as I said, go to our tertiary institutions today. Allocations are pumped in from government to every institution. But the chief executive officers do not live in the campus. Okay. What they do is they lift the PMS that is supposed to be supplying power to the institution to their private homes. Okay. These are also the set of people you want to entrust fund into. So for me, the government must be very sincere to provide job, to make sure that if we have given you our loan, we have a job where you can work for us to recoup our money.
All right, okay. Let's bring back the Honorable Minister to respond to some of the issues raised here, especially the issue of the guarantor to ensure that the loans are repaid. Actually, my question would be, do we have, the government, do you have a feedback monitoring mechanism, you know, to ensure that the feedback that you get, the loan scheme is reviewed, you know, from time to time in order to be able to address some of these feedback challenges that you receive from the public?
Well, thank you very much. As I said at the beginning, this is a new act. And even from my own perspective, there are one or two areas that I would like to see receive some attention. But the scheme needs to take off first before we look at some of these issues. Then, first, payment to beneficiaries will be made directly to the universities. It's not the money will now go directly to them. So drawing from it will now be between the students and the management of the universities in terms of their needs and the charges the universities would be making on all these loans paid on behalf of each student. And so to some extent, that's a form of control. Then I quite share the sentiments about guarantor, but the wisdom in it is that in what the government has done at the moment is not to provide too much encumbrance against accessing the loan by people who will have difficulties in getting a guarantor. So that is the reason. And the safeguard now to that is the responsibility placed on employers to give information on fresh employees, fresh graduates who may have benefited from that law. Employers now have to ask questions, interrogate their fresh employees to know if they are beneficiaries of this loan. And if they are, then they will now put in place mechanisms for paying back that loan. And it's a criminal offense. So it's a very serious obligation put on the part of employers in that regard. So there's no gap there at all. The only gap one could say is when somebody has not secured a job. And of course, the fellow would still be looking for work as soon as if within the 2-year window, he doesn't get work, he will have to report that fact. And then adjustment will be made in terms of when he will be eligible to repay, by which time he is expected to have secured a job at that time. And so the whole idea is to make access easy and simplified. You know, we can easily say from where we are for people to bring guarantors and that sort of thing. But we know there are some students out there who really will find it very tough and difficult to get people to stand in for them, even at the community level. And so the best scheme or a better scheme will be to catch up with them at the point of their graduation when they have finished and they are able to get the job. And then their employers will not take that responsibility of ensuring that they make a report, and then arrangement will not be made for repayment of the facilities obtained.
Thanks, Professor Maman. You know, you did mention that this is a new scheme, and of course it needs to take off, and then of course certain areas will be addressed. But I just hope the issue of ghost beneficiaries would also be addressed, because in this country we have ghost workers, ghost pensioners, ghost many things. So, you know, I'm sure a lot of Nigerians who want to a situation whereby the beneficiaries are actually students, you know, who are in schools and, you know, taking advantage of this scheme and to better their lives. That's one. Then two, will continuation, or if you like, accessibility to this loan be based on performance? Someone is in 100 level and then you don't do well, or you have a carryover, you are repeating a year, you continue to just benefit. I mean, could you also, you know, shed some light on these areas?
Well, I guess these are still some gray areas which the management will have to work out. At the moment, the assumption is that every student will access 500,000 in a year. If for some reason he fails to proceed, then that's an issue which the management will have to restore on, and how such situations will continue, whether he will have to find another means, or he will invoke whatever would be due to him in the following year, you know, and that sort of thing. So these are all internal issues that have to be sorted out by the management. And then secondly, the issue of ghost students. That's why some of the agencies of government that have to do with data are there. NIMC is there, so you can be sure the issues about NIN, BVN, and all those will come into play to ensure that every beneficiary, and also JAM, you know, JAM is the one who is the responsible agency responsible for admitting students.
As this
and I haven't had the JAM offered admission to any person who is a ghost student. So there are mechanisms. The presence of these various agencies is to ensure that those who get the loan are actually those who are eligible for it. Now, no ghost student will be able to access anything.
All right, Professor Maman, just a quick one, you know, because we know that you would soon attend to other issues and may have to leave us. I'd like you to speak on the issue of, say, a particular student who, you know, is in a particular discipline that is probably more expensive. Now, this benchmark on what a student gets, or what every student gets per year, you say 500,000, but we know that there's some courses that are more expensive than some. So would it be fair, and would it meet its objective, you know, for students, for example, that require much more, you know, to be able to go through school?
Well, you are right. Courses differ in terms of their expenses, in terms of their needs, and therefore their expenses. For instance, those in engineering, medicine, some environmental courses, for instance, they have some level of equipment which they need to buy. But remember, tuition is free, so they are not paying tuition. And the equipment we are talking about are usually provided by the university. Students don't have to buy them. And so even in the medical colleges, mostly they are overcall, there are basic things that they need to use in the lab here and there. And so government cannot provide for everything. That's just it. And then the 500,000 is actually a maximum. There are some students who may not even need half of that. But, you know, at some point, government has to be, like everything else, there has to be some arbitrariness in arriving at decisions, taking care of average situations, normal situations. Anything above it is not, cannot be within the contemplation of the law or even below it. So, so a decision has to be made on that. But overall, from my own experience in the academia for almost 40 years now, the 500,000 should be adequate enough to cater for the needs of students in terms of their maintenance. And of course, which is expected, and no matter what, however little, parents are expected to sort of augment whatever government has decided to provide. But for those who require that augmentation, but otherwise, in a normal setting, that amount is generally should be sufficient.
Much, Honorable Minister. We'll come back to you later. Let's get back to the studio now. Dr. Hayab, I want us to look at the impact this loan scheme will have on the education sector in the country.
Thank you. Without missing words, the students' loan, if it is accessible and made available, I believe it will encourage the indigent students or candidates who would have to do well. There's a lot of that needs to be covered. For instance, the Honorable Minister made mention of JAM. So I think that's even where it will start, that the candidates will have the required points, and then what they do not have is the money. Now, once you get such a list and you enroll these students, then the other point is, how do you maintain this loan? Every merit bursary anywhere in the world is actually put on this. You have to peg it to say, okay, you have to maintain a certain CGPA, for instance, to continue to benefit from this loan. When the Obasanjo administration was started, the merit bursary, I was still in the university at that time, and I got some money, and I had to maintain a certain CGPA to get the last money. So this, and that time it assisted, like I come from a very humble background, and I got 40,000 at that time. That was a lot of money. I never had any money like that at that time. So yes, it has a way of encouraging people to also feel very patriotic. So it has a lot of impact that it's going to create. First, it will give access to those who ordinarily might not have had access to higher education. And then secondly, for those who acquire these funds and are sincere, it's going to increase their patriotism. When I benefited from TED Fund, I came back to Nigeria, not because I didn't have any means to japa. At least I was already abroad. I could have lied. Coming from Kaduna with insecurity at that time, I wouldn't have returned. But it was this patriotism to think that because the nation has put something, has invested in you, it was proper to come back, and here we are in the studio talking. So yes, I believe that this scheme is a welcome development. Whatever criticism we're making is to make the loan better so that we don't repeat what has happened in the past. Like the comrade here said, there was a student's loan which became defunct. So whatever recommendations that was made by other confab was to return to status quo, only to review the flood areas, and that time people could take loans, and there is a problem of repayment, of tracking. Now, I was wondering, they would talk about BVN paying the money to the student's account so that you can test it. And because of BVN now, whether you have 5 accounts, it is still linked to you. So once you finish and you get a job, whether the employers take us, bring your case to the government or not, whenever money touches your account, I think the CBN should be able to know that this person has access to that account. I am a board chair in schools. I know the schools that I'm a board chair that has taken loan and has not paid, and the money counts on me as if I'm the one who took the debt. You know, so this is doable. Let's just hope that we will go ahead and do this and not be like any other scheme that we've done in the past. And I believe that those who would have, like me some years ago, who couldn't have acquired, will not have what it takes to acquire education, will acquire higher education. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hayab. Professor Maman, we need to get back to you now because, you know, as I said, because of time and the fact that you will, you know, leave us shortly. I want you to also speak to the number of times a particular student can access this loan. You know, we have some people who want to get all the degrees and, you know, yeah. So, I mean, you're done with 1 degree. Because after all, it's almost free now. You know, the government is paying for it. So you tell them, oh, I'm going for a 2nd degree, or I want to study another thing and all of that. So just let us know, is it open continuously? If I want to study till I'm 60, you know, I can benefit from the loan. And then what happens to the schools? Dr. Hayab has said this would encourage people to go to school. At the moment, we're having schools not having adequate facilities to meet up with the current reality. Now you're going to have more people wanting, you know, in the schools. If you do not strengthen them, they would also break down. They will not be able to handle the capacity. So what happens to the schools since we're trying to build the education sector with this loan?
Well, starting with the first question, certainly it's a necessary intervention for those who aspire to acquire qualifications to be able to have a decent livelihood. So for somebody who wants to go on a 2nd degree, you know, or whatever other qualification, that's clearly a luxury. So you will not be eligible for that under the law. And even parents, a lot of parents say, look, my responsibility is only to give you education, your 1st degree. If you want to have master's, PhD, you're on your own. Not to talk about government. So certainly it will not avail anybody who wants to go for a 2nd qualification. And then in terms of capacity of universities and beneficiary institutions, I don't think, yes, that level of amount will help them a lot to improve facilities and infrastructure. But I don't see that amount of money overwhelming any institution, any management of any institution, to the extent that they will be run by students. No, it will not happen. If anything, a lot of institutions are underfunded, and they can. That is a very important source of income for them to improve facilities for students. And what they need to do is diligence and diligent application of those additional resources. And I think these are some of the major multiplier effects of the institutions getting the funds directly, so that they can now use it for planning purposes. And like yesterday, when I had a Curtis call from Ahmadu Bello University, you know, there are about 51 or 52,000 students. So you can imagine if half of those were to be on, or more, would be on the loan, and the amount of money to come to the university would be a lot. And one of the issues that was a problem which they raised was issue of power, energy, servicing their energy, which is about 120 million per month. So they'll be able to service their energy, provide sufficient light for students, service the laboratories, and do all the basic things which they need to run a very good university. So everybody is a beneficiary uh, from this. Parents, the burden would be off their neck. They can now take their attention to other matters of concern for the family. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. But as we said, the problems in implementation, especially the repayments, will not come on board until the first set of beneficiaries graduate. And before then, a lot of reviews will be made to see any gray areas, and then so that they cannot be tightened. But our concern at the moment is to ensure that it takes off, and then eligible students have access to access the funds, and then they concentrate on their studies without the distraction of poverty and want.
Okay, Honorable Minister, before we let you go, the issue of limited resources is a serious concern. How many students, can this loan cover? And also, that the federal government is setting up like a management board for the management of this NEL fund, where, there will be managing directors and directors and all that. And they will also be paid from this fund. So do you think it will actually be adequate, or is government looking to other resources and other means of getting funds for this?
Well, under the law, if you look at the source of funds for this agency, it is very robust and multiple. And so I can imagine that, this agency is going to have sufficient funding for its needs. And then by the time, again, the students or beneficiaries begin to repay, that's also another additional source of money for them. And then it's also allowed to invest the money that will be accruing from the various sources. So there's very robust provision for funding this agency. And of course, those who will manage, the management of the fund cannot be financed from any other source other than the fund. And remember also that part of it is the appropriation by the National Assembly. So the source of money for this is very multiple. All that will be needed would be some level of diligence in managing the funds so that, it doesn't fall foul of, it doesn't run into the kind of problem that we've seen some new agencies run into with management way overboard in terms of the size of the agency itself, and then the emoluments accruable to them. It's a public agency, so I expect that the emoluments will also be tied to what is paid to public sector employees, even if there will be incentives here and there. And then we are there. The ministry, supervising ministry, will be there also to ensure that they stay in check, the management stays in check. And there's a reporting mechanism, I think every 6 months, on the financial status of the fund. At the point when they are doing their budget, when they have to pass it through the ministry, to ensure that there's a proper and diligent utilization of the funds, as the president has demanded in his remarks when he was accepted to the bill.
Very much, Honorable Minister. We have to let you go now because you already asked to be let go by 8:30. I want to thank you very much for bringing more clarifications to the issue this morning. Well, that's Professor Tai Maman, SAN, Honorable Minister of Education. Thanks for coming on the program. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. You're welcome.
Well, we'll take a break now. Good morning, Nigeria continues. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Our guests are still with us in the studio, and we're talking about the students' loan scheme. So I'll just get to Chinonso Obasi now. You patiently listened to the minister while he, tried to give us all the details about the scheme, and you have also spoken about, some of the drawbacks of the scheme. But now I want you to tell me about, the benefits of this scheme. A lot of people have said, well, yes, it would help our education system. You have more people in school and all of that. But do you agree that those are the benefits of this scheme?
Well, obviously, the scheme is really going to help to encourage people to go to school. In the sense that a lot of young persons or a lot of young people desire to go to school, but the cost of schooling sometimes become an impediment or a setback for them achieving that dream. So for the president to have graciously signed this into law, another thing is for the young people to know that this is what is in place. Because sometimes the government might have a goodwill to put policies to better the life of citizens, and ignorantly the citizens don't even know about it. The National Orientation Agency have to also swing into action by giving this proper orientation to young people, that now you have no other reason. There is no justification to say this is why you are not going to school, because government have made provisions to assist you in getting this education. Perhaps, I don't know, but I think the government must also, because the chief executives of the higher institution, their own side, they may see this as being beneficial too. Because having known that the government is giving you 500,000 for tuition fee, they will also go back to committee of vice chancellors to think how to also increase their tuition fee. Although the minister is not with us again, but the no tuition fee is a paperwork. Every Nigerian student pays for tuition, but the government is always shying away from accepting that we pay. It is only in paper they say no tuition fee, but every now and then the students are made to pay tuition fee. So if the government is very much sincere about that,
I think the government actually put that into cognizance, because they mentioned the fact that students pay for charges, different charges. So that is in the act. So I think that is yes, is part of it.
Yes, the charges they pay for, they also receive allocations. Every month, like I earlier said in my last position, every public institution receive allocation every month for the smooth running of their institution. Take for instance, Federal Polytechnic Oko, one of the young boys I'm training there in the school, called me to inform me that there is a little challenge in the institution between the student union government and the school authority. What is the problem? That the institution want to start charging what they call examination fee. After a student must have undergone certain studies, the onus should be upon the institution to test the proficiency and the capacity of the student to what he has been taught. Why now subjecting that student to pay again before he can sit for exam? So, for me, there are a lot of bottlenecks in our institutions, but one of my fears on this thing is, let the chief executives not see this as an opportunity to increase some of the charges. Let me use that terminology. Let them not use it to increase some of the charges, to meet up a way to also recoup what the government has given to the students. Okay. Like the closest public university here with us is University of Abuja. The students called my attention early this year or ending of last year, where the chief executive of the institution have to increase the charges from over 200%, where you see students who were paying over 35,000 naira for charges now subjected to pay over 200,000 naira. So now, without government giving this kind of financial support, so a chief executive officer who has such courage to increase charges from 35% to 200%, having heard that the government is already giving the scholars 500,000, don't you think he's going to increase it to meet up to recoup that much? So for me, the benefits are so much. One, just like the educationist here said, it will really increase patriotism, the spirit of patriotism. Sometimes the young people in Nigeria don't see there is any reason to even die for the Nigeria or to even giving their best for the Nigeria, because they believe there's nothing they are benefiting for Nigeria. They pay for their security, they construct their roads by themselves, they have to dig borehole for themselves to get water. So when you look around, the major infrastructural development that ought to be provided by the government is being done by the citizens. So, but the government...
Not in all cases.
Not in all, some cases. So, but when you come in this case of the government coming to relieve the load of paying for certain charges, man, every young person who have benefited to that will definitely see it that he is loved by his nation, and he has a responsibility to also love the nation back. Okay. So it will increase participation in education, which will also reduce the illiteracy level, okay, and increase literacy. And perhaps it will give us a more conducive environment, because one thing is government having policies and the citizens don't understand it. And I always say education is always the key to prosperity. When people understand you very well, you can now discuss in the same frequency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chinonso, for your thoughts there. I mean, you raised some issues which I also wanted to talk about. The issue of arbitrary charges in tertiary institutions. You, as an educationist, how do you think government can tackle that in line of these, this loan scheme, just like he said, that some institutions having in mind that, students now have enough money, at their disposal, so they want to get this money from the students. So what can government actually do, at least to sanitize, universities, especially to, correct these arbitrary charges?
Okay, now, thank you. Coming from what I read from what the ASU president said, ASU chairman, you see, the universities complain about inadequate funding. And when we try to run away from that, we run away from the truth. I attended university here at home and I attended university outside. Just here at the back door in Ghana when I was a master's student. The place I will take my lectures is so, at least I don't know what the situation is now, but I hope that they've maintained the standard. I didn't find that in my own faculty here where I attended. I undertook an undergraduate, because there is funding for universities. There should be funding for universities to renovate their buildings, to upgrade whatever it is that is lacking. Well, the universities and institutions of higher learning get money from governments, but most of these monies are not enough to actually undertake to improve the facilities. That is one fact. One thing, the other thing is the sincerity of the management of institutions across the country to not to use the students' loan. After all, how many students are going to get the loan? There are some who will never get the loan. So if you use the idea of some are going to come using the students' loan to hike, then there are those who might not be able to pay. One thing I believe is we need to just focus on how we can make our educational system better. When we attended university, I remember it is 3,000 that I paid as registration fee, and I paid 90 naira throughout every year as accommodation fee. Here at Ahmadu Bello University, 90 naira. I do know that there was a giveaway. There's no way, because those are friends who stayed off campus. They were paying lots of money, 50,000 naira to rent an accommodation that didn't even have the kind of facilities that we had. At least as a student who lived in Iksaramat, there was water every time. There was electricity, and we even I don't know if they are coming to arrest me now. We used the electricity to cook our food, and and the school was paying. Yes, so yes, for a long, that was when universities were getting monies and then charging us a little bit. Now these monies allocations that it goes to the university have not been reviewed, and then the cost of living has high. So sometimes this is where the management run into problems and would like to raise the charges, but to raise it by 200% is also not fair, because there is no way everybody is going to be able to get this. Exam fee, it's a practice almost everywhere in the world. The problem is when it is exorbitant. But even in secondary school, we students pay exam fee. That's unfortunate. They pay exam fees. It's actually factored into it, because
my child in crash even pays exam fees.
Yes. So this is where the problem is. The real thing we should be talking about is whenever anything is exorbitant, particularly that will now cause many to be disadvantaged. If I have acquired education from public schools, primary public school, secondary school public school, university, all public schools, and then, I mean, maybe I might not, but standard education, why should this not continue? So this is what we should be talking about, and we hope that this students' loan scheme would actually augment the number of people going to the university. Is very important.
Do you think this development now, this student loan scheme, will now allow government to give autonomy to federal universities for them to be able to, raise, ask for charges and all that? Because it's one of the reasons why the government, has approved this loan scheme to give autonomy to federal universities so that they can, raise funds by themselves and be able to, provide the necessary facilities, equipment, upgrade the standard of, learning and teaching in the universities. So, and with this development now, people are saying, well, it's the open door.
I hope they will have a large number of beneficiaries. The question was put to the Honorable Minister. He skipped it. We wanted to know how many, for instance, how many students that the government was looking at to give them at one tranche. Maybe if we have, let's say, 50,000 across the states of the Federation, or even more. Why not if we have the funds? Then the universities or the institutions will now place a charge on each of these students. So if your 500,000 naira is paid for you, maybe we'll take a particular percent. Whatever they get from that becomes part of their IGR. But the moment that is not what it is, it becomes a problem. Almost all the places where I attended universities, we had to pay charges for the monies we got. I got a merit bursary for my PhD at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. There was a charge to the fee. Yes, there was a charge. I knew how much money I was getting, and also had to pay the university. After it was direct, I got the money from the university. And these are some of the things we are suggesting, that we should look at global best practices. There are global best practices. For instance, when I got a merit bursary for a PhD, the scholarship was tied to me doing well within the first 2 years before I could continue. For the third year, even though I was doing well, I was not allowed to access the money. I needed to access the money upon graduation, so that if I become lazy, for instance, and do not want to finish the PhD, I won't get the money. So it became an incentive. And indeed, it was an incentive, because when I completed my dissertation and did the examination and went for graduation, this money was paid directly into my account the day the email dropped that I had now acquired a PhD. And I used it to buy an air ticket to go for the graduation. So this practice, there are global best practices which we as Nigerians need to copy, so that this loan will work, and beyond the loan, so that the educational system would be better than what it is, because it's dwindling now. You meet undergraduates, you talk to them, you begin to wonder, and they will tell you they attended the same, or they are attending the same university that you attended, and you knew at the time that you were there, the quality was far better than now. And now they have all the facilities with the smartphone. They can access 1 billion of books. Then what is happening? They should even be better. than our own situation where we relied solely on the physical library, and we didn't even have email addresses at that time. Unfortunately, there is a problem. Maybe the lecturers need to be taken care of, the schools need to be funded more. Let's increase the incentives across so that people will become more committed to the system.
Beautiful, Dr. Hayab. I liked your views on that particular question. Comrade Obasi, as we round off the conversation, you talked about patriotism, that this would instill, the spirit to want to serve Nigeria. But, there's also this mentality about the national cake and everybody wanting to have a share. So how can we, make these students, this young population of Nigerians actually see this as an act that should make them more patriotic and not see it like, oh, this is, if my governor is getting his share, or if, people who are in government, so this is my own of the national cake, and not see a reason to want to return payback and even serve the nation. How can we change the narrative in that light?
Well, on that basis, making sure that scholars don't see this as their own national cake, it then becomes imperative that students' performance must be checked before giving this loan. Because I can assure you that...
student performance must be checked. Are you saying that when they get admission, they will not be able to access the loan? Because you have to get the loan for you to get admission. Then is it after the first year that the assessment will have to be, or before they get admission into the university?
Like my days as a NANS president, when I usually go to institutions to negotiate or on behalf of newly admitted students, and the chief executive, one of them once told me that they are not yet their students. That until they start lectures,
and their names are written in pencil.
That is when they have become a student. Then I can now have the jurisdiction to say these are Nigerian students. That at this point, that they are still in the process of becoming students. So for me, someone making his jam, getting the required score to get into a university, it shouldn't be a prerequisite that you assess the loan. You must have been a student in a verified institution, if you ask me my own opinion. Thereby, if you are already a student and you are taken very seriously by your attendance in classes, because majority of students don't attend class. They have a way of paying their way and making their way, and until exam is ready.
Certain is the word.
Certain is the word. So the government must also be very careful of not using this loan to encourage hooliganism and truancy and any other form of art. In my own school, I'm a postgraduate student in Bayes University. And what is considered very, very more important than any other thing is your attendance to class. If you don't meet up certain attendance, you cannot write your exams. Before you ask any question, before you can make any report about what you are not getting right or what you are not comfortable with, your attendance must be checked too, even though if you are religious enough with your studies. So for me, making sure that this is not really a national cake, though the scholars don't take it as a national cake, the process from the beginning must be thorough. And it is to make sure that the people who are getting this money are people who are dedicated to their studies, by making sure of attendance, at least that first semester of you, of coming to school. There must be a track record that you are faithful in coming to school. Or anybody, any young person in the society can calculate it that, let me get jam. I can even pay machinery to get me a jam. Once I get this money, I use it to start a business. The aim is defeated.
Yes, but then the government has already said that the money will not be paid into individuals' account. So once the money is going to be paid to university, you have to get enrolled into a university, and then the university gets the money. So the loopholes, I think to a large extent, there will be a way that they could be covered. One of the things I would have suggested...
Do you think there is need for financial counseling or guidance?
That is the point I'm actually going to say, that we need to educate the minds of young Nigerians that we don't pluck money from trees. This concept of honesty, integrity, these are values that we had before, which maybe they're actually dwindling now. Some of our lecturers will say newspapers were kept on tables on their way from the hostel. They drop the money and pick up the newspapers. If you do that today, all the newspapers would have been taken before 6 a.m. so that nobody sees who is taking them, and there will be no money. Now, it was the same. I've gathered, I had a conversation with someone around Ibadan and Ife in those days. People will keep their wares on the way, and you drop the money, you pick it up. So what happened to us? And when you check the behavior of most young people, because it's not everybody, and then most Nigerians, there's this sense of entitlement that, like you mentioned, this is my own portion of the national cake. Until we get to kill this spirit, whatever programs we bring, I don't see it working. I do believe that as much as we will allow those who are already in the university to access these funds, government's interest is to bring in those who are outside, who feel we cannot because of our financial status. I stayed 6 years without going to the university after my secondary school education, and to a large extent it had to do with my family background. Until things started to work, that I made it to the university. So if God has helped, since God has helped me, and this is what the president might be thinking, why not we allow those indigent students whom ordinarily would not even dream beyond secondary school, let's bring them in. Then once they come in, we will now be able to raise their consciousness to want to work hard to remain, and then it continues. So I believe that it is possible.
Thank you so much. It is possible. A very good way to end the conversation. Many thanks, Dr. Philip John Hayab, an educationist. Thank you for your insight.
Thank you for being
And you have to pay back the electricity bill for the electric cooker. Of course. Thank you so much, Comrade Chinon Sobas, the President, Nigerian Youth Union. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
Of course, we appreciate Professor Tahir Mamman SAN, who joined us in the course of the conversation, the Honorable Minister of Education, and we do sincerely appreciate him for his time. So that's Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Yenwe John. Have a swell weekend.
And I'm Demola Adeye. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend.